All right, well, let's get started. Good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
It's good to be here on Friday evening to talk about raising the minimum wage. And so what we're doing, I'm Minister Earley. I'm with Raise Up Cleveland, and I'll explain a little bit about our organization here in a second. But here's how the community conversations are working. We normally try to do them within an hour time frame to respect everybody's time. We come together to just kind of give you some history on Raise Up Cleveland, why we're fighting to raise the minimum wage in Cleveland, and then kind of open it up for questions and feedback from the community, take some notes on some concerns or even good ideas that may be in the room. And then at the final part of the meeting, we do a community survey, which kind of helps us gather information on how the community feels about the best path to getting to 15, or people feel like, hey, it should just be 15 getting one. And so we thought that would be fair because we have been bumping heads with Cleveland City Council and the mayor, who have decided that they don't want to have a minimum wage in Cleveland at this point, and they do not want to have any conversation at all centered around how we do get to a point where we want to raise the minimum wage. So Raise Up Cleveland, well, that's kind of how the agenda will work. Is that fine for everybody? And I'm a stickler for time, so I'm going to try to get through this in an hour or less. So Raise Up Cleveland is an organization, a coalition that is formed of faith leaders, Cleveland residents, labor unions, activists, you name it, people, small businesses, people that want to be at the table to talk about attacking poverty in Cleveland. And one of the ways that we looked at doing this was we noticed a statistic that is very alarming, which says that over 50% of children and youth in Cleveland are living in poverty. And it is not because of irresponsible parents. It is because you have moms and dads, and sometimes both parents, that will go to work 40 hours plus a week just to make ends meet. Okay, we're talking about $8.10, which is not a living wage at all. Okay, and so how I kind of explain this is on a federal level. We all know that President Obama tried to increase the minimum wage to $10.10. Federal level looked at it, wasn't on the agenda, didn't work. On the state level, we don't have a governor or a state senate or a state house that's willing to take this issue up. And on a local level, as we see now, City Council and Mayor Jackson won't take the issue up either. And so how do we go about bringing change when our elected officials won't fight for our change? We put it in the people's hands, and we build people power, and we take it to the ballot, and we vote in our self-interest and what's best for our community. And so Raise Up Cleveland went out after getting a poll done that said 77% of Clevelanders that vote in the general election would vote to raise the minimum wage to $15 January 1, 2017. And so we began doing what everybody knows in terms of an organizer is a signature drive, where we went out and gathered signatures, enough signatures to get it on the ballot so that the voters can vote on it. Since then, what has happened is City Council and the mayor, understanding the process of how ballot initiatives work and getting it on the ballot, have decided to play politics and kind of stall out the process, hoping that we would miss the deadline to turn in our signatures. Well, we met that deadline, we turned in our signatures. Then they came back, and their next strategy is to try to stall out the process so that we would miss getting on the ballot in November. And I'll explain why that strategy is in a minute. But anybody that's in here as an organizer that has a passion for changing the systematic challenges that we have and things of that nature that it takes, you have to be relentless, you have to have a fire and a passion to keep going. So Raise Up Cleveland has been in the community, getting the signatures, making the residents aware of what we're trying to do for November. And then we started this committee process with City Council over here, public testimony. Public testimony has mainly come from the opposition, which is the business community, saying, this is not good for Cleveland, this shouldn't happen, and very little testimony from people who are in support of it. As a matter of fact, I've been to all of the hearings, and there's only been one hearing where those of us who are in support of it had an opportunity to testify. So throughout this process, you might have read that, Raise Up Cleveland missed the deadline to turn in signatures and going to make the ballot, that kind of thing. So when we realized what they were doing, we said, well, wait a minute, there's a provision in the charter that says we can go and get an additional 5,000 signatures and we can place it on the ballot whenever we want as a special election. So we went out and got 18,000 more signatures. You might have saw in the news that we went to turn those in, and the clerk of council rejected those signatures. To date, I'll give you some very mind-blowing numbers. To date, about 50,000 residents in Cleveland have signed the petition. And we've registered over 7,000 voters in the city of Cleveland around this issue alone. Now, that's more than the mayor and some city council people getting votes on election day. So it shows you that people are really concerned about this issue, and it also shows you that people are less concerned about the candidate, more concerned about the issues that are really driving us to the polls and to vote. So that's the quick overview, because I don't want to bore you with all of the political madness that's going on, but more so talk about the need. When we look at raising the minimum wage, we're talking about over 65% of workers in Cleveland that are still living in poverty. Okay, that means they go to work every day, they deserve an honest wage, and they're not getting it and still living in poverty. And let me tell you this, because some people think, well, those people don't have college degrees, or those people come from poor communities. That's not necessarily true. I have a cousin right now who has a degree and can't find the job that she's looking for, and she's making a little over $8.10 an hour after being in school for 4.5, 5 years. And so it's not poor people from inner city communities. It's not poor people that don't want to work. It's not that. It is the fact that, again, we have not looked at giving people a living wage in this country, and now we're seeing the effects of it, the poverty rates, and we're seeing the effects of it, the lack of employment in other areas. So Raise Up Cleveland is just that. It's a movement to really look at, how do we get to a living wage for individuals in the city. So on our ballot, on our language, we put on the ballot, we said, hey, we want 15 and we want it now, come January 1, 2017. So what the mayor and them have done since then, they see that we're building community support. I personally got tired of sitting in committee meetings and hearing those arguments and going back and forth. I said, why don't we just take it to the community and have a community tour where we meet in small, intimate settings like this and just hear from the residents and win community support that way, instead of what the opposition is doing, which is just scare tactics to scare people away from voting for this issue. So let me deal with some of those things. When we say the scare tactics and the opposition, there has been put in place now a group called Clevelanders Against Job Loss, and basically what they are looking to do is to put resources into TV campaigns and literature to just scare residents to say, hey, if you vote for passing the minimum wage, your business is going to die. Hey, this person has a business in the city. If we raise the minimum wage, they're going to leave the city. This person is getting subsidies and government assistance. If they get a living wage, they're going to be kicked off their assistance immediately. And if you hear those things, you think, man, maybe we shouldn't vote for a living wage. And it bothers me because those are all lies. Okay, this is not just a Cleveland thing. Across this country, people are fighting for a living wage in their cities and their states. California, New York, Minnesota, Arizona. I could go down the list. Seattle passed it in 2014. And as a matter of fact, Seattle is a great example because they deal with all of the scare tactics that came up. For instance, Seattle said, okay, people need a living wage. So let's do this. Let's bring coalitions, business community, elected officials, and residents together, and let's talk about a plan that would get us to $15 an hour that would be best for everyone, so it wouldn't hurt businesses and so that it would help families. And that's what's missing here in Cleveland, is that our elected officials have decided not to sit at a table like we're doing right now and have an honest discussion about what's best for the people instead of what's best for the businesses downtown, the stakeholders when it comes to donations to campaigns and things of that nature. It's really heartbreaking to see some city council members that I've worked with on other issues, stood with on other issues, to be against this issue right now. I was talking to a civil rights giant and pastor from our city earlier, and I said I've worked on many different issues, and I don't understand why this issue on poverty and raising the minimum wage is an issue that they would not sit at the table to discuss. So that's what's missing here that's happened in other cities. And so in your point to Seattle, Seattle said, okay, if you have a business with 500 employees or more, you phase in at a different rate, over a year's period. I think it was 5 to 7 years. If you had a business with 500 employees or less, you phase in at 3 years, to get to that minimum wage. Why? Because they didn't want to run businesses out, and that's not what the plan was about. And the other part of it too is when businesses started to cry foul and say, we're going to move out of the city and we're going to leave, the response was why? Because when people have more money in their pockets, they're going to spend it into their economy, okay? So why would you want to leave? Why would you want to break camp? Come to the table, let's see how we can best suit this plan to meet your business, because even your employees need a living wage as well. And Seattle did it. And I am telling you that as I look through research, and I can share some sites with you all of research that I've been following, a more recent article said that there was little to no job loss in Seattle. And that where they thought businesses and employers would leave, they actually kept their businesses there and new businesses were created and revenues went up, okay? Again, because when people have money in their pockets, they spend it, okay? So you'll hear an argument that will say, well, it's just bad for Cleveland because there will be a disinvestment in Cleveland, and if it's just in Cleveland, the businesses can go right over to Lakewood or right over to Mentor and open up shop there. And the reality is, as I've shared publicly and I keep trying to get the mayor to see, is that we're starting in Cleveland, but we want this to be a statewide ballot initiative in 2018 when there's a statewide election going on. And so, number one is Cleveland offers so many tax breaks to businesses, if we're honest, that I've said to business owners, why would you try to leave within that 1 to 2 year period and go somewhere else and pay higher taxes when Cleveland is already giving you a break? And it's going to be statewide anyway, okay? When this thing goes to the ballot, it doesn't move. The only time it's held up is when it's sitting in the halls of a legislative committee or waiting for a vote. But when it goes to the ballot, it wins, okay? And so you'll hear stuff like businesses will leave Cleveland, and again, that's my argument on that. Small businesses will be destroyed. Well, we looked at small businesses, and in our proposal we said if you have a business of 25 employees or less, you won't have to pay the minimum wage, okay? Because we know that you're a small business and you're trying to make money to keep your business growing, okay? And we want you to get to a point where you can pay your employees more, okay? So small businesses are protected by this. I'm walking sometime down the street talking to storefront owners and they hear the minimum wage and it's like, no. And then when I talk to them and I say, well, how many employees do you have? And they say, well, I only have 5. I said, well, you won't have to pay them $15 an hour. As a matter of fact, these clothes in here that you're selling and the books that you're selling, people are going to come by because they have more resources. I was in a barbershop the other day and getting my hair cut, and I almost had to have the barber stop cutting my hair because I thought he was going to mess me up. On purpose, like, why are you doing this? And blah, 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 blah. I said, how many barbers do you have here? We got 4 chairs, 4 barbers. You don't even pay a minimum wage to your barbers. They get paid based upon the cut, and then they pay you a fee for the chair, okay? And single moms have more resources than they'll bring their children to get haircuts and things of that nature. It is all about education, and it's all about the truth. This is not designed to put Cleveland on an island to destroy our economic structure. It is to put Cleveland in a role of leadership to say, okay, yes, this needs to be statewide, but why can't we take the lead on this, okay? And so Raise Up Cleveland is out here fighting against those narratives, those unfactual statements, and those fears. Let's be honest, this is new to the city. We haven't raised the minimum wage here in years, if ever, since the federal minimum wage was raised to what, $7.25? And I know Cleveland City Council say, well, we did do a living wage in the city, and we get that, but people aren't making $15 an hour. And if we had kept up with inflation, let me tell you that we would be somewhere around $22 an hour for the minimum wage. So even what we're asking for is not where we need to be, okay? So we're not asking for a lot. We did another poll recently, after some months of being out there, people change their minds. And I can tell you that most of the data that we've collected is that people are still in support of a minimum wage. Right now, ready to go. 64% right now are ready to vote for a minimum wage to $15 an hour come January 1, 2017. But what some residents have said is, have we looked at a phase-in approach? Which lets me know that people are doing their homework. Because every city has said, okay, let's raise the minimum wage, but they've looked at how to do it over a period of time that's fair to the working family and the working individual. Okay? So with that, what we've said is, okay, our stance is 15. Let's go out and see, who feels what and what other organizations are out there and what other proposals are out there. In City Council Committee, they voted unanimously to not support, and this was just the committee, not the full council as a body, which they'll vote next week on August 10th. If you're available, please come down to City Hall and witness this at 9 a.m. But as the committee voted, they voted no against the 15. Councilman Jeff Johnson introduced a proposal that said, okay, how about we start at $11 an hour and we work up $1 every year till we get to 15. Now, am I in full agreement with that? No, I think our people need $15 now. But again, looking at the common sense approach and looking at what other cities did, that's better to me than being at 8-10. I wasn't going to settle for 9, and definitely not 10. And I see Mr. Seals. Mr. Seals like 15 right now. And again, that's how the conversation is going. And so they, out of the committee, only 5 city council members voted for phasing it. The rest of them voted no. Okay. Again, which really hurts my heart, because I think that as a leader, we should vote in the best interest of our people that we're representing, and the people do want a living wage. Okay. So where we are now is, if you might have read in the paper, that the NAACP recently came out and endorsed, and let me say that Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus was the first to say that they support this issue, and thank you to them. We should give them a round of applause. Cleveland NAACP has endorsed Raise Up Cleveland's mission, and they agree that it should be a phase-in approach, and I believe their proposal starts at like $11 with a $1 increase every year. The Urban League of Greater Cleveland is getting ready to release their statement on this and recommendation, which is in support of raising the minimum wage. They also believe in a phase-in approach as well. And I'm looking at some other organizations that are going to do some public endorsement as well of raising the minimum wage, which is to come. Where we are now is on August the 10th. The full council will be in session at 9 a.m. in Cleveland City Council chambers, and they will vote on whether or not to accept our proposal at a straight 15. Councilman Jeff Johnson's proposal, which will probably start at $11. And our prayer and hope is that they will vote yes to support it. If they do not, we're ready to take it to the ballot in 2016. Right now we are in waiting for the Supreme Court to make a decision on the supplemental petitions that we turned in, because City Council said that they weren't valid and that they would not accept them. So they'd rather spend money in court and to, again, come to the table and talk about what's best for the city of Cleveland, and that bothers me as well. And if they have it their way, they will push it back so it wouldn't be on the ballot this year. But let me tell you why that disturbs me. It's because, again, it's politics as usual. City Council and the mayor want to put on the ballot this year a tax increase for the residents of the city of Cleveland, but do not want to vote on a wage increase for the very people that they're asking to take more money out of the check. That bothers me. That is poor leadership, and it is not in the best interest of the people, and it is unfair to the city of Cleveland as well. So they would rather wait, knowing that we have the power through the ballot initiative to get it on the ballot in 2016. They would rather wait to push it to 2017, which I think is political suicide as well, but also shows the boldness and disrespect to residents and voters, is that, okay, in 2016, I want you to vote on raising your taxes, and I'm going to tell you no on a wage increase. But in 2017, not only do I want you to vote on raising the minimum wage, but I want you to vote me back in office because I'm up for re-election. It is just, I don't get it. If anybody else gets it, please give me an explanation tonight so I can sleep. So with that being said, these community meetings become important because we want to stay in contact with you through email, through text messaging, and everything other than social media, every avenue that we can to communicate with you about what's going on with Raise Up Cleveland and the fight that we're really in. This really, when people say fight for 15, they think it's just a slogan. It really is a fight. I remember sitting in a city council meeting one day after marching to City Hall in the morning, and we sat there probably till about 3 or 4 o'clock, dealing with politics and fighting back and forth about what should be and what shouldn't be. So it really is a fight.